good evening, everyone. Welcome to the episode 2 of Joe and Ro Talk Toastmasters, a podcast designed by Toastmasters for Toastmasters. This evening, we have a very special guest with us. But before I introduce the guest to you guys, let me set down some ground rules. You know, in Toastmasters, we love our rules. So the rules are pretty simple. Please remember, this is a podcast. This is not a meeting. So to that end, keep yourself on mute all the time and keep your cameras off. Here we are going to focus only on the guest and have conversation with the guest. Second rule is, please remember, this is not an interview. This is a conversation. So grab your cups and coffee and tea, just sit back, relax, and enjoy an hour of conversation with our special guest. Our first episode was with distinguished Toastmaster Brilliant SK. The link to that episode is now uploaded on Spotify and YouTube. We will be also sending the link in the chat boxes and messages. Tonight, who do we have here? I know the people in the room can already see who he is. Personally, I've never met him, I have never seen him in action, but I've heard so much about him that I'm excited today to welcome our very own guest, DTM Nikhil Salvi. Who is Nikhil Salvi? For veteran Toastmasters, I'm sure District 98, everybody knows who Nikhil is. But for newcomers like me, let me give you a very short introduction. Nikhil is the ex-humorous speech contest champion and evaluation contest champion at district level. He is an investment banker by profession, but I think he's more of a speaker and a comedian at heart. That's what I've heard about him. He has been a Toastmaster since 2009, and I'm sure tonight he's going to give us a lot of tips on how to be a good speaker and how to create a good speech, especially the great ingredients needed to cook up a good speech. But before I hand it over to Nikhil, let me call upon my co-host, Ron Villimoria. Ron, you know Nikhil personally. Tell us something about Nikhil that we don't know, something that's not there on his biodata.
I don't think I know anything about Nikhil that in that way, but I'll tell you a small thing about how I first saw Nikhil. This was in 2012. I had just joined Toastmasters, maybe it was 2-3 months, and we were told that go to other clubs and look at what people are doing. So my first club visit ever in Toastmasters to another club was to Mulund Toastmasters. And guess who was the educational speaker at that meeting? I think Nikhil must have been just 2-3 years in the, you joined in 2009, so it must be 3 years in Toastmasters. And he gave a speech education session on grammar, on the correct use of grammar. And I was like, wow, this guy knows his stuff. This guy's a superb speaker. And of course, over the years, I got to know Nikhil not only as a fantastic speaker that he is, but as a friend, as a fellow Toastmaster, as a guide, as a mentor. And I think we've gone through a lot of meetings and a lot of contests and stuff like that over the years. And he's one person I always look up to in Toastmasters in the district. So it's really a privilege to have him and to pick his brain on this very interesting topic, which is a very fundamental topic for everybody, right? How to cook up a speech, because everybody stares at the blank sheet of paper and says, now what should I write? What should I do? So over to you, back to you, Joanne. Let's get started with Nikhil's inputs.
Yeah, so getting back to Nikhil, before I start with Nikhil, let me tell you this. This is the first time I've heard somebody giving an education session on grammar. Do you have a background in English literature or English grammar? Like that's, I think, one of the most difficult education sessions out there. So what made you do that? Like just 2 years into Toastmasters, why grammar?
Before I answer the question, first of all, a very good evening to everyone who has joined. And thank you, Ron and Joanne, for inviting me on this session. To my knowledge, this is the first podcast on Toastmasters. So I really appreciate the initiative that you are taken. This is a new medium to connect with members across clubs. Now, coming back to the session on grammar, if I recollect correctly, the purpose of that educational session was not to teach grammar, but basically to make sure we get enough grammarian nominations in the club. Because whenever the VP education would ask members, do you want to be the grammarian? People would say, no, I'm not very good at grammar. As if we have to eat, sleep, and drink the Renan Martin grammar book that we refer to in school. That's not the objective in Toastmasters. So there was a misconception about who can be a grammarian. And I thought, let me take a quick session, maybe to break down those misconceptions. Similarly, there are other misconceptions, including about giving speeches, which we will try and address. But to answer your question, the purpose was, I don't have a background in grammar. The purpose of that session, if I recollect, was to make sure we get enough grammarian knowledge.
Do you remember it? The one which I attended? Do you remember that session in Mulund? I mean, it's so many years ago.
I don't specifically remember, but I have repeated certain sessions. But if you remember it, I'll be happy to hear from you. What did I actually speak about?
I don't remember anything about that. I just remember how good you were and what a fantastic session it was.
It doesn't matter. You know what? We need these sessions happening because right now I'm the VP education of my club and I am finding it difficult to fill the grammarian's role. That is a role that never gets filled. So I feel you, Nikhil. I feel that feeling of, why you needed to take that session. But coming back to why we are here today. Today, we are here to talk about how to make impact on stage as a speaker and specifically focusing on how to cook up a good speech, right? We see so many contestants like world champions coming on stage as Toastmasters. We have gone through the YouTube videos and we are always like, wow, what a speech. But from where I am sitting today to get to that stage, and then people telling me, wow, Joanne, what a speech. What does it take to go from here to there? What does it take to make a really good speech? First, I'll ask Ron this question, and then I'll come to the champion himself, Nikhil. Ron, what do you think?
I think every Toastmaster, when he starts off this journey, they are always like, how do I pick a topic? That is the number one question I get asked as a senior Toastmaster, especially for people who've just done their icebreaker and now are looking for subjects. So our stock reply usually is look at your life, look at examples from your own experience. But I think somewhere that answer does not satisfy people. And I don't think we have ever given a really adequate answer to them, to the newcomers, because everybody finds and writes their speeches in their own different way. But yeah, I would love to hear, Nikhil, that how do you come up with a topic? And after you share that, I can also, maybe if something triggers, I can also share some ideas which I had when it comes to topic selection. But let's hear from you first. How do you imagine a blank slate, blank page? You have to give a project soon. How do you do that? Where do you go?
Sure. I will share my perspective, but before I do that, I observed something very interesting that Joanne said. She said that as a new Toastmaster, let's say, you look at world championship speeches and you think about how do I get from here to there. I went through a same thought process. When I joined, I started looking up speeches on YouTube, and at that time, the most trending speech at that time was 2001 World Championship speech called Ouch by Darren Lacroix. He's a renowned Toastmaster. And when I saw the speech, I was, of course, floored and enthralled. I started looking up points on how to make a great speech. And the list that I sort of culled from various sources almost gave me a stroke.
Same here.
Because there was nothing left there. There was great topic. You had to have good language. You had to have great opening, great closure, transitions, use of grammatical constructs like alliterations, similes, metaphors, etc. And this was just the written content.
Very intimidating.
When it came to the delivery, it was about you have to have stage presence, body language, gestures, expressions, and on top of all that, vocal variety, etc. And if that was not enough, you also needed to connect with the audience. Add humor, by the way. Yes, humor, I forgot that. So I thought I can't ever be as great a speaker as that. But when I started attending my club meetings more and I observed other speakers, and I saw that they were giving normal speeches on normal topics. And then I became a little bit more comfortable saying, okay, I could also go give speeches like these. And then I started giving speeches. So my initial first 4 or 5 speeches were absolutely on normal topics. In fact, I remember the first 4 or 5 topics also. The first was, of course, icebreaker. And the second speech was actually on rainwater harvesting. The third speech, I don't recollect, but the fourth one was about a travel journey, because the objective was
Very
usage
typical topics.
Yes, typical topics. The fifth one was actually about a recipe, making a paratha. So it was the speech objective, if you remember, project 5 was body language. Your body speaks, and you have to use body language. And I thought, I can't give a normal speech which has any body language scope. So I described my experience of rolling the pin, kneading the dough, and flipping the paratha, etc., and eating it, etc. It was very rudimentary, I would say, elementary school level kind of gestures. But that was the most sense I could make out of that project. And I went ahead and gave it. I think if I look at Toastmasters and I put them in 3 categories, let's say. The new Toastmasters who are like between 1 to 5 speeches old. Let's talk in speech ages. Okay, 1 to 5 speeches old.
Yeah, nice concept.
Then
speech
it's
age.
around 6 to 12 or 15 speeches. They are like intermediate Toastmasters. And then there are more advanced Toastmasters who are more than 15 speeches old. I think for your first 1 to 5 speeches, don't aim for the sky. I would suggest pick any topic. Anyways, the expectations are low because you're a new Toastmaster. You can get away with speaking on anything. Even if you don't have a very impressive voice, body language, vocal variety, etc. So, Sat Khun Maaf type concept is there. You'll get away with anything.
But give speech. The first 5 speeches. Yeah.
But give speeches. Don't let high expectations keep you away from the speaking area. Between, let's say, 6 to 10, 12, 15 odd speeches, you'll start to get used to this concept of giving speeches. And you will know that you can give a speech. Then is a time to sort of focus on the minor aspects. Then maybe in one speech, you focus on just writing the content well. Good transitions, good use of language, etc. And don't worry too much about the other stuff like body language and vocal variety, etc. Anyways, even if you get some feedback from evaluator, if you hear it, note it down, but that's okay. You are not aiming to excel in that area. And then other speech, you focus on content and something else. In the next speech, you call content and body language and vocal variety. And you slowly build up that set of tools or your dimensions as a speaker. And then you will see which are your strength areas and which are your not so great areas. Some are great at creative writing. Some are great at vocal variety. You will find that niche very quickly.
So Nikhil, I have a question for you before you go, because this is so important. You said the first thing you do is write the content well, right? Can you take us through that process of writing a content? What would you do? You have a topic.
Structuring it, yes.
Yeah, for example, take a topic, smartphones. You have to give tomorrow or right now a speech on smartphone. You're sitting down with a pen and paper. What is that process that goes through your head? Please tell us.
So when it comes to any topic, when you hear something, ideas start to come in. Just note down in bullet point forms or some form, whatever it is like an idea dump. Don't try to write the speech from start to end. Just have an idea heap or an idea dump.
Yeah, like a brain dump. Like dump it all on the page.
Yes.
Whatever, like smartphones, positive, negatives, everything on the page.
Everything.
Okay.
And even if you don't do it at one go, like you sit now and you do it, not necessary. Keep thinking about that idea when you're on the way somewhere, and keep it at the back of your mind, and more ideas will keep coming, and just dump it. Then literally write it down somewhere or note it down, maybe on a smartphone, etc. When you have a lot of such ideas, or whatever ideas you have, a list, when the time comes to write the speech, just look at them, read out, and you will know that certain ideas or points belong to each other in a group, like a bunch. Okay? So that becomes like a one bunch. Then another becomes another bunch. And something else becomes another bunch. And some topics will sort of hang around like, lonely people.
Without any branches.
Yes.
Without any branches.
Yes. So then leave them aside. That's okay. So when you have certain groups like these, if you have at least 3 groups,
Okay.
you have the content of a speech. If you can make
Okay.
3 paragraphs out of these 3 groups, okay, that's anyways around 600, 700 words. It's like the core of the speech.
Okay.
Then you have to think about an opening and a conclusion. And then how to link it.
So you
The
first
challenge-
jot down the ideas, group them, think of 3 core ideas for your body, and then you go for an opening and closing. So for you
That's
always. Okay. Please.
Yeah, that's
continue.
a very interesting way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
how
and
I
you
try
get
to
a
do it.
ready-made structure as well for the speech
Yeah,
to start
because
off.
I'm trying to get that structure out of Nikhil, like
Yeah.
how did he write that district level championship speech? Because many a times I'm so hooked up in writing a great opening that I always think of a great opening. Like I see a quote and I'm like, okay, this is a great opening. I should write a speech for this opening. And 99% of the time that speech bombs. It is not a good speech. So I think what we get today from Nikhil is that first focus on the core idea, try to group your ideas together in 3 paras, and then a great opening and closing, right? Yeah.
3 or 4, it depends, but you get the idea. That's a core of the speech. Now, the interesting point you said about thinking of a great opening and trying to write a speech that follows. You have heard the term, the tail wagging the dog.
Yes.
So this is like the whiskers wagging the rest of the body.
I think Ron needs to make a comment here, right? Like I can see you smiling, Ron. What do you think about a great opening? Like in your 11 years of Toastmasters, how important is a great opening, Ron? Or is it not important?
I think no, it's very important, obviously. But I agree with Nikhil that the body and the content of the speech is much more important and be focused on first. What I do for the opening is once I have at least the basic content in place, I look for shock value for the opening. I look for something that will gain the interest of the audience rather than it being the start of your content. Content is content, and the opening and closing should be something like a trailer and at both ends of the speech. So my opening is not going to make the point which I want to make. The opening is just going to get the audience's attention. And if I shock the audience, or I make the audience scratch their head or wonder, common things like asking a question or even a quote, which is not a bad idea, but don't have a boring quote. Have something quote which is contrary, which makes people go And yeah, the Nikhil's approach is very right. So have the content and the meat of the speech first, and then maybe add the opening and closing to the end, and make them a little shocking, a little different, a little bit contrary. Don't make sure they are not boring, because the content can be a little boring if it's on certain topics, but the opening closing can be interesting to keep the audience's attention.
Nikhil, you
What do
have
think,
something to
guys?
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with Ron that catchy opening in whatever shape or form it comes it hooks the audience, and it can even start from the title. So there was one icebreaker that I came to know. The icebreaker's title was Past Imperfect, Future Tense.
Wow, interesting.
I still
I can
remember
feel a
the
grammar
title.
session happening right here.
No, but see, that is also very important that the topic itself can be a good opening, because when the T-Mod reads out your topic, that's when the speech actually starts, if you think about it.
Yeah,
But
so Nikhil,
coming
go
back
ahead.
to coming back to Joanne's point, if you have thought of a great opening, but the speech content doesn't really follow, that's okay. You can keep that opening idea for another speech for which it is more suitable. So it need not go waste. But don't try to force fit a great opening with a content that doesn't really fit well. That's okay. You can think of a different opening here, but keep jotting down your ideas somewhere. If it's an idea for an opening or a conclusion or some gimmick also, if you think about in the middle of the speech or some code, etc., doesn't matter. It may not fit in this speech which you're writing next, but it can come in handy in some future speeches. So just note it down somewhere.
So I have to bring you back to that past perfect future tense. You were talking about that speech, like that was an icebreaker speech, but that title was an opening. How was the title an opening? Like, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So it was a young person who was giving the speech, and his whole speech was about my past is very imperfect and I'm worried about my future. So he tried to capture it in the title, saying past
Okay.
imperfect, future tense.
You didn't get
That
that,
is a very
Joanne? You didn't get that
I didn't
word?
get I didn't get it. Like, yeah, okay.
It's such a clever thing, you know?
Yeah, that's such a clever thing, such an interesting thing, to get a title that is thought-provoking.
I like to use titles like you are handsome, because then the Toastmaster goes like Ron Bilimoria, you are handsome, Ron Bilimoria. And that gets the audience laughing and interested in what I'm going to say. Although, and that kind of gimmicky stuff can also work provided your content is good.
Okay.
Gimmicks without content, audience will see right through it. Sorry, Nikhil, go ahead.
Okay. So laughter part, we spoke about how you would write down the speech, like idea, group, then think of an opening, then think of a closing, right? Then what? Then what do you do?
So once I have sort of these parts, I try to join them together so that there is a flow. It should not feel disjointed that I'm jumping from one point to another without any bridge in between.
So what are your tips for transitions?
So project 3 of the Competent Communicator Manual we had very good description of transitions.
Like whenever people say competent communicator, I'm sorry, so sorry to interrupt, because all the new Toastmasters, including me, have absolutely no idea what it is. We are the pathway babies.
Loss for you guys. I'll get you a copy, Joanne. Just go through it once. It's one of the most beautiful books. I mean, it'll be a loss, I think. Personally, I feel.
So just to sort of set the context for everyone. Now we have level 1 in pathways, level 2, level 3. In the previous curriculum, the first level was called as competent communicator, which consisted of 10 speeches. And each speech focused on one aspect of public speaking, like introducing yourself, organizing your speech, having a general and a specific purpose, use of words, use of body language, use of vocal variety, doing research, using a visual aid, motivating the audience, and then inspiring the audience. These were the sequence.
Absolutely beautiful.
Isn't that the same that is happening right now in pathways also? It's the same projects, just you have divided it as level 1, level 2. So what is the difference between that and this? What is the loss here for newcomers?
We will get a little distracted if we try to compare the older and the newer one. But coming to the point, just try to look up project 3 of Competent Communicator Manual. There will be some manual PDF copy, etc. available. It describes transitions. So coming to Ron's point about how do you make the flow, there are some good points referred. There are some transitory phrases or words. For example, if I complete a point, then start a new point, then I would say, although XYZ, which was referred to in the previous point, it is also important that, and then follow with my. This is just one example of a bridge between this and that. And similarly, there are more bridges like that. So if these bridges sort of help the speaker to maintain a flow while speaking, and from the audience point of view, it helps to experience a smooth speech without any abrupt jump from one point to another, which leaves sometimes the audience wondering, wait a minute, he was talking about X and now he's talking about Y, and what is the link between them? Or is there some link that I'm going to come to know later? And if the audience starts to wonder something, then they have lost the connect with the speaker. So transitions. And that sort of mainly completes the writing part of the speech. And
What
then
about
there is a preparation.
No,
Yeah.
what about the footer, the ending?
The conclusion, the punchline.
Punchline.
The punchline.
I always say end on a high note. So what would you say? So you've got the opening, you've got your 3 or 4 content pieces, you've got your transitions in place. What do you suggest for the ending?
So what I was saying was, I had already my opening and a conclusion separately written,
Okay.
and then the 3 or 4 points, and then the transitions would sort of just bridge between start and the first point, first and the second, and then the conclusion also. So I had assumed that conclusion is already written.
Okay.
But just like a good opening, a good conclusion also helps. Even if you're not able to get a great conclusion, which is very impactful, that is fine. Even if you just summarize it, what you have said, that's also good enough most of the times. But there should be some indication that it is a summary now. So
that's an interesting point, because, you know, as a speaker and evaluator also, every single time I've heard, you need to have a conclusion that is a message or an inspiration or a call to action. That's what Toastmaster says. This is the first time somebody told me it's okay, just summarize your point and conclude. Don't need to go for, you know, a bang on conclusion every single time. So thank you for that. That is something new and interesting that I have learned today. It's like no need to always, because it's a headache to always think of a very bangy, punchy conclusion.
No, but don't take of it as a headache. You know, it's very important to see. Nikhil is right. There has to be a summary and there has to be. But of course, there are some speeches where if you're giving a humorous speech, there is no summary. By the way, if I'm giving a nice something like I'm trying to go after a girl, I'm trying to marry this girl, and I have this very funny speech about how I'm trying to do it. What am I going to summarize? That I failed here, then I failed there, then I failed here. There's no summary for such a speech, right? In that case, you have to make sure that the ending also leaves that same momentum there. So summarizing is good in very informative speech where you've given a lot of stuff and you want the audience to remember 2 or 3 things before you close. But don't, it's a good habit to, I at least feel it's a good habit to close very powerfully. Because I think last thing people will remember is your closing, even if some of the stuff in the middle is forgotten, you know.
So Ron made an important point, whether it's an informative speech or an entertaining speech. So generally there are sort of 4 odd kind of speeches. One is an informative speech. You're giving some information where you can summarize. Another type of speech can be an entertaining speech. You need not summarize, but the ending could also be entertaining. But it should somehow indicate to the audience that, okay, this is now wrapping up. It's like the final episode of a web series. Okay. Then there is a motivational kind of speech and an inspirational kind of speech. Now, a motivational kind of speech and inspirational kind of speeches generally have a call to action. So depending on the kind of speech that you are writing or delivering, you can decide which is the more appropriate ending point for the speech, which leaves the audience satisfied that, okay, this was a good speech and it ended well.
That's a good word, satisfied. Satisfied is a very good word to leave the audience satisfied. I think that is very, very important.
So I have a question for Nikhil. Nikhil, you're a humorous contest champion, right? So What is the difference between humor and joke? Now, when I started, writing speeches in Toastmasters, I read in the Toastmasters manual as well as on YouTube videos, something that I heard of is, in a speech, don't put a joke. It will never work. Put humor. And that got me confused. What is the difference between humor and a joke? Do you agree that jokes don't work? Only humor works? And if so, why? Can you please enlighten us?
There is a specific manual in the older curriculum on humorous speeches.
Okay, please enlighten us.
I'm the old school guy, if you can call me that, which has 5 speeches. It's an advanced manual, and it explains in minor detail the difference between a joke and everything else, or
Okay.
humor, that's it. A joke is a setup, a pause, and a punchline kind of framework.
Okay. Setup, pause, punchline. So joke is that. Okay.
So a setup is Ron and Nikhil went into a bar, kind of, and then the setup again then is Ron says to Nikhil something, and then there is a pause, and then there is a punchline said by Nikhil or by Ron, whoever it happens. And the punchline or the punch word is supposed to be a surprise. It should trip the audience's mind. And if they trip, and if it is done well, it's a good joke. Okay.
So what is humor then?
Humor is an idea that is explored slowly over a period of time.
True.
Okay.
And humor sort of is not, heard, laughed, and done away with. It is sort of absorbed and enjoyed for a longer period of time.
So it's like, yeah, so it's like what you're trying to say, and what I'm gauging is humor is more about engaging with the audience at that point of time and, being there, while joke is already set and you're just introducing it, already something made up, and you're introducing it into the speech.
I would say it differently. I would say joke is something which is preset, which you rightly said, and joke is not personal to you. Humor can be very personal to you. Like if I am trying to marry this girl and this girl is rejecting me, that humor is very personal to me. Whereas a horse walks into a bar and the barman says, "Why the long face?" That is also a funny joke, but it's completely unrelated to me in any way, So
unless you're a horse, then
unless you're a horse, in which case it's very, very relevant. But the thing is, humor, when we write a humorous speech, we can include jokes carefully, which makes sense in terms of relevant, but the humor has to be a personal journey also. Like Nikhil said, it has to be a kind of exploration of what has happened, what has not happened, with a funny twist to everything. So of course, humor itself is a huge topic, which we can speak another 2 hours for it. But the whole point is, be sparing with jokes. And if your humorous speech, focus on your own experiences. That would be my advice. Would you agree, Nikhil?
Yeah, Nikhil,
I
you were
agree
saying
with
something.
you. Yeah, sorry, Joanne.
No, you were saying something.
Yeah. So, do people read Toastmasters magazine that comes?
Some of us do. Yeah, some of us do.
In chat, please, all the guests who are present here, Toastmasters.
So just generally asking.
If you do read, please let us know.
Anybody reads, please show of hands.
So, for those who read it, there is a article at the end by somebody called John Cadley.
Okay.
In every magazine. And when the magazine used to come in hard copy format, I used to read that article first. He is an marketing and advertising professional, not a Toastmaster, but writes regularly in the magazine, and he writes one page article on some topic. And if you read that, you'll understand the difference between humor and a joke. He would take one idea let's say he would make fun of his own profession, like advertising jingles and advertising claims. We do this and this. And he would explore it in such different ways that invariably by the end of the article, I would at least have a smile on my face. And if not, laughing. So humor is something that is not done away with in a few seconds or in a few minutes. You take an idea and you explore it, and you explore it in more detail, and you explore it in a lighter manner, bringing out the discrepancies, extremities, and other such things for your enjoyment as well as the enjoyment of others. So a humorous speech is any topic that is explored in this manner. A humorous, let's say, book is one such topic or an idea explored in much more detail.
PG
And
Woodhouse.
so on.
If you want to see real humor, PG Woodhouse, master
Yes, I am a
humorist.
PG Woodhouse fan myself.
Yes, so
and
that's
I agree with
beautiful
you.
humor. I mean, if you want to build a base of humor, PG Woodhouse is fantastic too. For all Toastmasters should read at least one or two of his books, just to understand what subtle humor is about.
So before we get back to you, Nikhil, Cyril, you asked this question, has anybody read John Cadley's article? So Cyril says it's a delight to read his columns, and it's a master's class on subtle humor. So, Cyril is your fellow in this case who has already gone through John Cadley's articles. And thank you, Nikhil. That's such a wonderful tip, because I had no idea that something like this precious and articles of such caliber, is there in Toastmasters magazine. I'll also go and probably go to the last page first.
I think Toastmasters magazine is one of the most undervalued assets in Toastmasters. And I think when we used to get the physical copies, it used to be read a little more than I think it's being read now. But if you are a leader in your club, I think distributing the magazine would be a very good tool for your members. And I think it's an undervalued tool. I used to enjoy reading it when I used to get the physical copy. I have lost touch with it online now. But yeah, that's a very good tool for everybody here today. Get it and distribute it in your club digitally on your WhatsApp group. Just make a point of that. People will really enjoy it. Also, it gives you a kind of idea what a newsletter, what a magazine should be, even for the club or a division or the district level. Can we have questions now? Let's have a quick
Nikhil has
5
a
minutes
point to
of
make.
question. Yeah, sorry, Nikhil.
Nikhil has a point
Let's.
to make. Nikhil, please.
Just on this point by Ron, you also read such articles to get an idea of how you can incorporate humor in your speeches. Because a lot of people struggle in terms of incorporating humor in the speech.
True.
They feel like they should have a joke. Unfortunately, a lot of so-called humor in the media is outright slapstick comedy and such kind of one-liners, quick wit, even insult comedy for that matter. And people have a lot of people who are not exposed to quality humor, which is subtle and it is not derogatory, etc. They don't know such kind of humor can be there. So when you read such articles, you'll get ideas about how you can incorporate in your speeches. So since we are on this topic of writing
Magazine.
speeches, do read such content, and I'm sure you'll be thankful for it.
So before we getting back to the ingredients of a great speech, now we spoke about the structure. We spoke about humor versus joke and how to incorporate it. Please read the Toastmasters magazine, my dear friends, especially if you get a chance. Go and find out John Cadley's article, highly recommended by Nikhil and our guest today, Cyril. This is right now the time when guests and fellow Toastmasters, if you have any question for our ex-champion, just put it on the chat box. As and when we get time, we'll be asking those questions to Nikhil. Meanwhile, till they do that, till our guests do type in their questions, Nikhil, let's get back on the topic. What are the ingredients required for a great speech? What do you think? What do you suggest?
So in terms of ingredients required for a great speech, the ingredients are generally well known. Like I said, the listener gave me almost a stroke at the start. But great speeches or better speeches are actually not written but they are rewritten.
Okay.
And this is not very evident in normal meetings, because you think of a topic, write a speech, deliver it, and then it's over. You get the feedback and evaluation. This is more evident in contest. And especially if you win at one level and you have to go to the next level, then you start thinking about, okay, how can I make this speech better? So you gave a speech at the club level, it won, great. Now you have an opportunity to go to the area level. And now you start thinking about, what should I do? Such kind of situation has not arisen before, because normal meetings, you don't rewrite the speech. So that is where I experienced how to improve upon a speech. And Ron has also participated in contest and has reached up to the district level also. He can maybe vouch for this.
Yeah, let me put it this way. Let me ask you this way. Both you and I have been mentors for a lot of Toastmasters over the years. Mentors submit the speeches to you, correct? You and me, obviously. Mentees submit the speeches to you. Now, when you get these mentee speeches, can you tell us what are the common issues, problems that you face? What is the most common advice that you are giving mentees? What is the repair work you are doing? What do you see that can be avoided? What are the mentees which are doing well also? So just go back into your memory and just share what are the kind of common issues that mentees come up with, because obviously that is also with the speech writing, and mentors have a huge impact on our speech writing, obviously.
A common observation is that a lot of speeches are written in such a way that they read well, but when you deliver them, they don't sound that great.
Very nice.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Especially with Chat GPT. I want to bring that point right now, Nikhil, before you elaborate on this. For everyone who's listening, when I went to a club meeting recently and I saw this person giving a speech, and it was, wow, such a well-written speech. I felt like Chat GPT wrote that speech. But in a well-written speech, you can always make out that it's a well-written speech, but it's not a well-spoken speech. So why, Nikhil? What is that difference? Tell us, please.
Well, the difference is the audience. When you read something, you are reading it for your consumption. But when you're delivering a speech, it's like a conversation that you're having with the audience. The audience needs to be able to understand what you're saying and feel what you're saying is relevant to them, and they feel connected. To do that, you need to keep it a little simple. You need to incorporate certain elements that address the audience directly. And such things you would not do in a content that you are writing for reading purpose. Like you write an email is different. And if you're having a conversation with somebody on the phone, it will be different. So those are the sort of subtle differences. So when
what else? What other issues that you spot with mentee speeches?
Other issues, initial that 1 to 5 year speech old Toastmasters, they generally are less clear about what the main point is. They go a little all over the place trying to incorporate X, Y, Z is one. At other times, the sequencing of points also needs to be better. There are so many times I remember I have not changed anything in the speech of the mentee. I just reorganized it, took the same points, placed them in a different order. And when I asked the mentee to see if this sequence is better, they immediately thought, oh yeah, this is much better. So knowing how to place the points one after other is also important. And you do that because the audience receives it well. Now, after giving many speeches, maybe people like Ron and me, we have got a sense of how a speech will sound to the audience. But for new Toastmasters, writing a speech itself is a challenge. So additionally think about how this is going to sound to the audience in what sequence, etc., is an additional burden or a task. So this is where taking help of a mentor or a senior, more experienced Toastmaster who is a better speaker or a better writer than you are is important.
Other than experience, is there any other thumb rule you use for prioritizing points? Is there anything like that, or is general depends on the topic?
It generally depends on the topic, but general thumb rule is don't introduce complex things right at the start of the speech.
Okay.
Even if the takeoff is a little plain, simple, normal, go by the numbers kind of concept, that's fine. You can create that impact later in the core content of the speech. You have time for that. The audience is not going to go anywhere once you start speaking. You're not going to get up and go. You'll have time for explaining your main point. So initially, if you start
ramp
with a simple,
up to the subject.
Sorry?
Kind of ramp up slowly to the main
Yes.
theme. Okay.
Yes. So in trying to impress the audience, maybe new Toastmasters generally, or those who are less experienced, they try to impress with putting a lot of impressive content right at the top of the speech. It becomes like a top heavy kind of speech.
So true, so true. You're so true. The things that you said, you know what, Nikhil, this is amazing because these are not things that you get in your Toastmaster guidance and manuals. You know about the structure, the body opening, closing, but the fact that you said, don't introduce complex things. I didn't know this because when I read, I used to always be like in the first 30 seconds of your speech or the first minute of your speech, audience should get to know exactly what you're talking about. Otherwise, you won't make an impact. This is the thought with
there's a difference. You have to tell them what you're going to talk about, but not just unload on them the entire gyan at the beginning, because then the audience will go, wow, what is he doing? But yes, at the beginning, you need to be clear about what you're going to talk about because the audience has to be prepped for that.
Yeah, no, but Nikhil's advice that don't make it complex.
No.
That is where the difference is going to come. Because I used to personally do that. Like I used to make it a little complicated in the start. Just to get in that 1 minute or that 30-second time limit, like audience should know exactly what I'm talking about. But now I'll focus more on making it simple, that idea. I have a question for both Nikhil and Ron here. Nikhil, you're a humorous speech contest champion, District 98, right? But you don't look like a humorous person. Now, I'm putting this question to both because Ron knows you personally. I don't know you personally. I'm conversing with you right now, and I don't see you smiling. I don't see you cracking jokes. And you come with a perception that someone who has won the humorous speech contest is someone who's naturally a very funny kind of a person, someone who will crack a lot of PJs, someone like Ron, just keep on cracking PJs. But you come with a different personality and persona. Is this who you truly are, or this is just for this interview? Are you a humorous person? Are you someone who has a sense of humor naturally? Ron, you'll tell me the secrets. Nikhil is thinking, what should I say, right?
First thing
I have an answer, but let Ron...
Go ahead, Nikhil.
Let Ron speak first. I'll answer.
Okay, then I'll go first. Then first thing I would tell you is don't judge a book by its cover. Very old saying, very good saying, very wise saying. Nikhil is a very good example of somebody who can be humorous, but at the same time not outrageous, or somebody like me who can crack a joke a minute type, which is also a different type of personality. Doesn't take away anything from the humor. I mean, I can be standing with him in a meeting or sitting with him in a meeting, and he'll just lean across and make a very funny comment without even making it sound like a joke, and I am like trying to really hide my laughter. So it is, people are different, but there is no type which is humorous. Obviously, there are certain boisterous comedians, and I think Brilliant mentioned that in the last episode also, that there was one guy who was a deadpan. I don't remember. Do you remember the name of
I remember. It was standing deadpan and talking.
Deadpan, and he launched when the audience was rolling in their seats. So, I mean, don't judge a book by its cover. That's my advice to you. Nikhil can be damn funny when he wants to be, but yes, overall, he's a serious person. I can tell you that.
That's so inspiring.
He works on his craft, and he really cares about other Toastmasters. He's helpful always. You come to him with any issue, he's always there with a solution for you. But yeah, he's not a person like me. If you spend half an hour with me, it's all up and down, up and down. With him, it's like smooth sailing. He's very articulate, well thought. I mean, I could say he's a gentleman. I'm a little bit of Gunda type. He's a gentleman. So I think
That's
that's I
great,
said enough
Grace.
already. Yeah.
And I'll take your word for that, because right now I'm looking at him, I'm talking to him. There's not a smile on his face, and he's a champion. That's quite inspiring for people like, who are not naturally humorous. Nikhil, what is your take on that?
So early on in my Toastmasters journey, I sort of realized what kind of speaker I am. I am more like an informative speaker. I can take complex topics, simplify them for the audience, and explain it to them so that they understand. And that's the value I thought I bring to the table. But humor was something that was missing from my skill set. And I attempted to learn it. And thankfully, to some degree, I have learned it. So somebody can think of it as having an arrow in your quiver. Okay?
Wow.
It's a special arrow. You use it when you need it, but you don't have to sort of use it all the time. Every arrow is a humorous speaker. You don't have to be funny every second sentence, every third sentence, etc. But when you're called upon, and not just in contest, okay, even generally when you speak, like for example, there have been a lot of occasions I've spoken in my office in front of my team. There are birthday celebrations, somebody's send off, some special occasion. And invariably, there is some moment where there is some awkward pause, etc. And that is sort of my opportunity to say something interesting. So, for example, there was one send off, and it was a gathering. There was one of my team members who was going to another job. Everybody had gathered, and the team member spoke first, and he was very emotional. And he was not able to speak continuously. He was speaking for some time and then holding back his tears, etc. Some of the team members had joined through a video conference. And when the time came for them to speak, the video froze. And I said that even the video is choked up with emotions.
Okay.
And it sort of eased up the tension. Everybody had a good laugh at it. So this is the kind of occasion, you could say. There's nothing planned, but I just thought of it on the spur of the moment, and I was saying, I just said it aloud. So I think of humor as sort of a skill that you can bring into play when needed, but you don't have to overuse it all the time. There are some people who are naturally humorous, and they are witty. They can, even in normal conversation, say something interesting every second, every third sentence. And they have that kind of personality, which suits them, which is fine. But it may not suit me. My personality is different. So I will use it sparingly whenever, say, called upon, whenever I think it is appropriate. And it will sort of help everybody enjoy. That's it.
Can you explore this idea? I love this idea, this interesting idea of your personality affecting your speech writing. So can we explore this, that what your type of personality should suit the speeches that you write? So can you elaborate a little more on it? You made a good point with humor, but generally when people have to assess their personality and then write, maybe they can explore the comfort zone a little, but does that make sense actually, that your personality and your speech writing should be kind of in sync?
So that's a very interesting point. I have observed that in case of my mentees, the way they write the speech shows to me what kind of personality they are. So you don't have to do it differently. I have 2 to 3 mentees. One of them is a more extroverted, energetic kind of person. Okay. the choice of words, choice of examples, the way he explains a point, all reflect the way he's going to speak on the stage. And I don't try to change his style, which is completely different from mine. I just try to make it better and more suitable. And then there are others who have a more explanatory style. And I let them sort of be guided into how they can improve upon that and so on. But for people to write speeches suitable to their personality, I would say don't do it consciously or deliberately. Rather, don't try to write a speech like somebody else.
Yes, that was exactly the point I was trying to make. If
Yes.
somebody is inspired by the world champion speaker and he or she kind of, okay, I want to do that, and maybe they're not suited for it, or maybe even their level of learning is not suited for it, and what comes out is kind of not very kind of polished, not very, the pieces do not fit properly, and it looks like they're trying to do something that they're not comfortable with. Toastmasters, we of course encourage experimentation. That's the whole point of being in Toastmasters. But I think people have to understand what their personality is and not blindly try to write a speech based on what they saw somewhere or what other speaker. I can never give a speech like Nikhil. Nikhil can never give a speech like me. And it would be a mistake if we tried each other's styles. Although we can learn a lot from each other, but trying to just adopt Nikhil's style because I love the way he speaks doesn't make sense for me. So I think the beautiful part of Toastmasters journey is you discover through speech after speech after speech your own voice, your own body language, your own way you write, the own way you bring out your humor. That I think is a beautiful journey of discovery, which all of us are going through. Many of us have gone through for a long time. And I think speech writing is a very important part of that journey. And I can guarantee that if you remain in Toastmasters for maybe 3 or 4 years, you will know yourself much better than if you had not been in Toastmasters. That self-discovery is huge, especially when you're writing speeches.
So we are like 2 minutes
let's
left.
give Nikhil the last word, and then we will close.
No, there's a question. Actually, there's a question.
Okay, let's
Yeah,
go.
there's a question for you, Nikhil. And the question is, you spoke about at the start of the podcast, you spoke about ages, speech ages, right? And you elaborated on the newcomers, the first 5 years, like don't think more about the audience. There is a question from Srijita.
First 5 speeches, not years.
Yeah, okay, so sorry, my bad. First 5 speeches. There is a question from Srijita. She says, what about someone who's in that like not 5 to 15, but above 15 or in the 5 to 15 zone? What do they focus on?
They can focus on finding that voice or that your unique aspect that Ron spoke about. Because by that time, you have given enough speeches, and then you are trying to polish some specific aspect of your speaking. Either it is content or body language or vocal variety or humor and so on. Either you improve upon a certain strength area and explore it to a degree that you did not do earlier, or you can identify some lesser strength or weakness and try to come to a stage where it doesn't appear as a weakness.
Okay.
So the overall aim is that when you reach that stage of between, let's say, 6 to 12 speeches or higher, you keep exploring what to next work on in terms of your public speaking criteria. It could be impromptu speaking, it could be humor, it could be something else. It depends from person to person. But there is always enough in terms of area of where you could improve upon, not because you are weak on it, but it's an area of really, it's like an area of improvement where you achieve the next level of proficiency that you yourself do not think about. And this is not just limited to Toastmasters like us. In 2007, if I recollect, there was a world champion of public speaking, a person of Indian origin, who had gone to the US and competed from there. I forgot his name. He was asked in a podcast conducted by a couple of foreign Toastmasters. He was asked, what's next for you? You have won the world championship speak. So he gave an answer that said that, look, I may have won the world championship, but that doesn't mean I'm good at everything. I'm not very great. I'm not very good at stage movement or stage presence. And he gave examples of some other world champions who were great at it. He said, now my task or agenda is to go back to the club level and improve upon this aspect so that I become a better speaker. So to give the short answer, keep finding what you would like to next work on, and then keep working at it.
Wow. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you so much. Cyril says it's because Jingran, the 2007 world champion.
Yes.
Thank you, Cyril.
Thank you, Cyril.
Cyril is the Toastmasters encyclopedia right now working for us. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nikhil, it's already 9:02. It was wonderful to have you on the podcast. Any last final words for all the Toastmasters and guests right now? And for all those viewers who are going to watch you on YouTube and listen to you on Spotify.
So my earnest request, please give regular speeches. Try to give a speech at least once a month or once in 2 months. That's a kind of frequency that you can aim for, keeping in mind the rest of our lives and how busy they are. If you find that you're going on a speech fast, that is, you're not giving a speech for quite some time, then you're depriving yourself of the opportunity to improve upon your public speaking. Even if you're speaking as a role player, that's different than speaking as a speaker. So please keep on giving speeches. It's not that difficult. Try and you will figure out what suits best for you. And one point which was sort of obvious and we did not cover it is that please write your own content. Don't take it from somewhere else.
Leave ChatGPT behind.
Yes, no ChatGPT, no copy paste, no Google, nothing.
No Wikipedia.
Whatever, even if you think I'm not a good writer, doesn't matter. Write whatever you can. It will come out from your heart rather than from your head, and the audience will anyways know the difference between some content being picked up from somewhere else and something that is spoken from your own experience and from your own preparation. So be genuine, be a regular speaker, and enjoy your Toastmasters journey.
Thank you, Nikhil. Ron, any final words for today?
No final words. We are really out of time, but we have to wrap up. So I'll leave it to you for the vote of thanks. And my deepest and sincere thanks to Nikhil and all the guests who came here today. Over to you, Joanne. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, so just to summarize what we spoke in quickly in 1 minute, start with normal speeches and normal topics, something that we as Toastmasters forget about looking at, Mohammad Katani and Dhananjay Tiarchi. We aim there, we'll get there one day, but start with normal speeches. That's what Nikhil has advised us. And lovely, the speech ages that we have spoke about, 5 speeches, 5 to 15 and 15 and above. Think about your audience. Don't think about your audience. Think about yourself and just write your speeches when you're beginning, and then try to find your voice, try to find your personality, try to find who you are through your speeches. That is a journey that both Nikhil and Ron attest to as they are veteran speakers. And that is what they advise all, newcomers as well as veteran Toastmasters to do. In speech writing, today we discussed how do we start? We start just by dumping our ideas and then grouping those ideas probably in 3 to 4 paragraphs. Then go for an opening and closing. And you know what, today, Ron, for me, the biggest learning is what, you don't need to be a humorous person to be a humorous speech contest champion. That was a big takeaway from me, Nikhil, because we come with this bias and with this perception that only someone who's naturally humorous can add humor. And thank you so much for, breaking that myth and perception today and being that persona of it's okay, you can be a serious person, yet you can learn and develop the skill of humor. This question gets asked to all of us. Can I do this? Obviously you can. If Nikhil can do that and become the district champion, I'm sure everyone can be that. Thank you, Nikhil, so much for being with us today. It's a great honor and pleasure. We have just started this initiative called Joe and Ro Talk Toastmasters. And you took the risk to come to us just on episode 2 and share your advice with us and with all Toastmasters and guests. That's a huge honor for both me and Ron. Thank you so much. Just a few words about the podcast. We got a lot of positive feedback. We got a lot of critical feedback. We are very grateful, both Ron and I, extremely grateful to all our Toastmaster friends and guest friends for your feedback. We're just starting it up. Obviously, there's a lot to learn, and episode by episode, season by season, we promise you to work harder and get better at this. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Before we finish, one thanks to our clubs, our respective clubs, Khargar Toastmasters and Palava Toastmasters, and the president and EXCOM for supporting us and backing us for this initiative. I think our president was online, but I think he's left right now. Ajay Kale, is he there? Thank you for and to Tata as well. And big thanks for backing us and backing this initiative.